everyone, kia ora koutou, and welcome along, haere mai, to Showy Ovaries, a podcast where I, Penny Ashton, do a deep internal dive into the visceral, hormonal, fleshy, flabby, womby wonderment that is menopause before my own ovaries resign from duty. A quick note, as always, that I am not a medical specialist, though I have played the role of patient getting a pap smear in some gynae exams, where the students gave a plastic pelvis sitting next to me a smear and then talked me through the results. Just remember, all you want to be actors, if you dream it, you can be it. But please do seek actual doctors for advice because they've practiced on plastic. My guest today is anything but plastic. I first became aware of her when she was being all hilarious, strident, stroppy, and shrill, the best words, as she spouted marvellous feministing on breakfast TV here in New Zealand. And I was so impressed, I was compelled to tweet at her. To my delight, she tweeted back. And to my even more delight, she has agreed to chat to us about her bits. She's a committed feminist, a writer, a copywriter, then a lecturer in advertising, a regular panellist in Australian media, including on The Gruen Transfer, which is an ABC show focused on advertising, a mother of two and a very, very devout atheist, much like myself. So please stop driving, pull over and put your hands together and welcome Jane Caro. Hooray, hooray, hooray.
I just have to say, I haven't been on The Gruen Transfer for years and years and years.
Oh, really?
Yes. I used to be, but they fired me.
Oh, did they? Was that from being too stroppy, strident and shrill?
Oh, I think it might have been because I wasn't working in advertising very much anymore, and also I got a bit old, long in the tooth. They're not crazy about that. They said they wanted to freshen up the lineup, but you know what that's code for.
Oh, yeah, that's code for ageism.
Yeah,
Thanks very much.
Yeah.
Oh, that makes me angry and I'm not even you. Anyway, so how is everything going over there at the moment?
Well, about the same as it's going everywhere else. Chaotic, uncertain. Everyone's very pleased to be out and about again, but a bit worried about Omicron. Is it just going to take us right back down the line? Is 2022 going to be like 2020 and 2021? There's that fear. And, of course, people are also starting to get very stroppy. I've just come back from the New South Wales teachers' strike. I'm not a teacher, but I have a lot of support for teachers, and my daughter and my sister and my niece are all teachers. I've just come back from there where they've been protesting about ridiculous low pay, unbelievable increasing in workload, most of it busy work, data collection, admin, not teaching, nothing that helps the students, everything that helps the Department of Education who've outsourced all that work, which they used to do, to the poor old teachers who already have enough to do, therefore chronic teacher shortages, all that kind of stuff. And I think a lot of people who are in the helping and caring professions who kept us running through COVID are all feeling the same. Fuck this.
Yeah, fuck this. Like the nurses, everything as well. I can understand that. And we have exactly the same. And of course, they all had to move online with their teaching, which is so much more work.
In New South Wales, they had to do it in 2 weeks because a new premier had a sudden rush of blood to the head and said, we're going to go back to school a week earlier than otherwise planned. Why? For what earthly point? But it nearly killed the teachers and principals having to get it all together.
You've had some fun times with your premiers, have you not?
Premiers, ministers, prime ministers, honestly, Australian politicians, they're a breed apart.
Yes, and you've been very vocal about a lot of that. And, do you know what? I think I'm going to get to my longer introduction.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and then we can jump into all of that. So here we go. Jane Caro was born in the UK, but moved to Australia at the age of 5. She graduated from Macquarie University with a BA in English literature, having decided that the only thing that she was good at was words. She then used those words for 35 years as an award-winning copywriter in the advertising industry, where she battled full madman-style bullshit misogyny and fought for recognition amongst all the dick swinging whilst being constantly overlooked for promotions. In the mid-2000s, sick of knowing that her potential was being squandered, she quit the ad world and went solo on a career of social commentary, writing, analysis, documentary producing, podcasting, and as she says, stirring. In this time, she's written for the Sydney Morning Herald, appeared on Sunrise and occasionally on The Gruen Transfer before they fired her for being ageist. Written or contributed to over 10 books, including The F Word, How We Learned to Swear by Feminism, Plain Speaking Jane, a memoir, and 3 novels about Elizabeth I, as you do. Co-hosted a podcast called Woman of Clout, is rumoured to have nearly run against well-known Minister for Women, Tony Abbott, has gotten into various tweet storms, including that she wished she was a New Zealander, as everyone does, after their last federal election, and that sport is dumb. And it's basically an all-round, so I don't like to say ballsy, so I would say fallopian, bitch-slapping, unapologetic advocate. She is a Walkley Award winner and a member of the Order of Australia. And I'll finish using her own words, which is her advice to campaigners. Don't be nervous. Don't be nice. Don't placate. Don't apologize. Be upfront. Be straightforward. Be emotional. Be angry. And recognize that there is strength in numbers. And don't be discouraged. Unless, of course, you're anti-vax, and then you can fuck off. So anyway, please welcome, yay, Jane Caro. Hooray.
Thank you.
Well, that's all right. That's right. Now, that is a lot. Do you sit back and think, yeah, man, I did that. That was me. I've done all that.
Not so much. I mean, I'm very, very proud of the Walkley Award. That kind of is the big thing. And the AM was a complete shock. I still can't quite believe that I got one of those.
Did someone that you know nominated you?
Yes. They later fessed up and told me, fellow feminists, which is very nice of them. And I know that it was quite a fight for the women on the committee to get it for me. There is a real push on to get more women in the honours lists here.
Right.
Because they do, like everything else, tend to be dominated by blokes. So I've been the lucky recipient of that. But no, I don't think – I'm very proud of the books I've written. That was always an ambition, particularly the novels. Mm-hmm. And I've got a new novel coming out in March, which is my first novel for adults. I don't like to say adult fiction because it sounds like it's full of porn.
That's right.
No, you'll be disappointed if that's what you're expecting.
Okay.
I'm very proud of that kind of thing. But I do tend to look forward, like what am I going to do next rather than what have I already done.
Okay, cool. And so what was it about Elizabeth I that was so alluring to you?
It's very interesting you ask that. She's always been a hero of mine ever since I was a child because growing up in the 50s and 60s, there were hardly any female heroes because one of the things that history does, his story, is buries the achievements of women. We're only just finding out about things like Gould's Book of Birds, which is famous in Australia. We all thought was written by Mr. Gould. No, all the drawings and everything, Mrs. Gould. She never got credit, but she did all the work. And we're hearing this more and more and more and more about women whose achievements have just been totally absorbed by their husbands or whatever and ignored. There's lots of scientists that that's true of. And so it was really hard to find heroes, role models. And then I read about Elizabeth I, who was universally acknowledged to have been an extremely good monarch and queen, not perfect, I mean, certainly of her time, with all the faults of her time. But when you read about her life, quite remarkable. And so I wanted to write a novel, a historical novel, and I thought, what could I bear to research in depth? And then I thought, Elizabeth I really like her. She's really interesting. And I just wrote what I wanted to write. The first one's called Just a Girl. It's a trilogy, and it's about her up to the age of 25 when she becomes queen. And it's written in first person, so it's a bit arrogant of me. But anyway, it was published as a young adult novel, which is actually suitable, and I'm really pleased because I really wanted other girls to discover this amazing woman. She was an amazing woman. She never married. She never had children. She didn't want to. She was smart enough to realise what that did to women in that particular period of history, even if you were a queen. And because she was a queen, she had the power to decide not to marry. She was able to use it as a kind of diplomatic promise that she never came across with. It's just a remarkable story. And what I realised long after I'd written it, a young woman revealed it to me at a writers' festival, Melbourne Writers' Festival, the school's day. And she said to me, by way of a question, did you realise when you wrote Just a Girl that you had rewritten the Cinderella story? And I looked at her and I said, oh, my God, no, I didn't, but you're absolutely right. And you have just revealed to me why I've been so obsessed with her all my life. And it's because when I was a little girl, all the stories I was told was about these women who were helpless in the face of something awful, and then a prince came along and rescued them. But the thing about Elizabeth I is that she was in a terrible situation as a young woman, in terrible danger, neglected, unloved. She didn't have clothes that fitted her, hence the Cinderella reference. You think she's a royal princess, but when you get into the story, it's much more complicated than that. And instead of a prince coming along and rescuing her, she grew up, became her own prince, and rescued herself. Mm-hmm. And what I love about that is that owning of the power by the woman.
Right, absolutely. And that's what you're all about, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm wanting women to own their own power, and I believe that feminism is a revolutionary movement designed to redistribute power more fairly and equally, and it was to take power away from people and give power to other people. Some people have too much power, some people have too little. Yes, we do want to take power away from some people.
Yeah.
because they've got too much of it.
Yeah. Or I like that quote that when you're accustomed to privilege, equality feels like oppression.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I think
But it isn't.
Yeah. And you're also a big fan of literature, obviously, with your English literature and things like that. And so I do a Jane Austen musical and a Charles Dickens musical.
Oh.
And I liked that you came back against the tweet saying that you should try sport more. And you said you should read Austen and Dickens. And I was like, yay, that's what I've done.
Well, I didn't. So, yes. I've been misinterpreted. Somebody came back and said, you don't like sport, you don't know what you're missing. And I said, I'm sure that's true. But that's true of everyone. Everyone likes some things and therefore doesn't have time for others. I said, I like reading Austen and Dickens. So I could say, and then I was an elitist snob, and I think people who like sport can't read. It's not what I said.
No.
I said, yes, it's true. We all miss out on good things because we don't have enough time in our lives for every good thing.
I was reading a Daily Mail article about that tweet, and I was like, what the fuck am I reading? An article about you tweeting something that's quite benign, ultimately. And so,
it was.
Yeah. Do you get a lot of pile-on and stuff? You must get quite a bit of abuse and things with the stroppy stridentness.
Yeah, I get piled on every now and again. You can sort of see it coming. For me, the piling on is almost always led by the mainstream media. This was unusual in that it wasn't, but almost always, to be honest, it's the Murdoch press that will take something and take that as an excuse to try and pummel me into submission. So far, it hasn't worked.
No.
I'm not sure I enjoy the pile-ons. They're no fun when they're happening. I'm not going to say that anybody loves being abused and misunderstood and accused of believing and thinking things that you don't actually believe and think. None of those things are fun, but I have learnt more and more that I need to understand, and I often give this advice to other women who get piled on, because it doesn't just happen to me, it happens to every woman who dares to stand up and speak out. The more they hate you, the more effective you're being.
Yeah.
The more frightened they are.
Yes, exactly. Anyway, enough of that. We're here to talk about your bits. So the first question that I have been asking everybody in this podcast is, what has your relationship with your body been like in your life, and what journey has that been on?
Yes, my body has been both a good servant in that I'm very healthy. I don't get sick very often. It has a lot of energy, but not a lot of stamina. So I'm very energetic, but that means I get tired. And I've learnt to give in to that tiredness and take rest when I need it. And I believe that rest is very important. It's produced 2 children. On many levels, it's been a very good and serviceable body. On another level, I'm very short. I'm 5'1".
Oh.
And I really wish I wasn't, because as I now am in my 60s, I'm going to shrink and I don't have any inches to lose. And I'm clinging to my high heels for that reason. Like if I go to a cocktail party, I often say if I don't wear heels, it's all tits and pits for me. Which I don't love. That means my feet hurt very quickly and then I go home, which is good actually. I don't spend very long at cocktail parties. I don't get drunk, which is excellent. But I've struggled with my weight my whole life because I'm short. Short people do. One of the great advantages of being tall is that if you put on 2 kilos, no one notices. But if you're 5 foot and you put on 2 kilos, it really shows. So that's always been hard because short people like to eat just as much as tall people, but we can't. We just can't. And every 10 years you have to eat even less. So I'd say the major issue I've always had with my body is trying to keep it to a healthy weight for my height, which has led to much misery, I think. And I don't just do it for vanity, though I'm as vain as the next person, and I definitely look better and I'm thinner and I like that. And I can buy more clothes and I like clothes and so on and so forth. But also at one point I did put on quite a lot of weight and I was diagnosed as pre-diabetic. So now I need to keep my weight down for health reasons. And that's boring.
Yeah.
I have to say no to a lot of things that I would really like to say yes to.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it has encouraged me to put exercise into my life every day. I walk for at least 10,000 steps a day and I go to Pilates twice a week and I'm pretty physically active. And that's been a bonus out of the need, because if I exercise, I can eat a little bit more than if I didn't exercise. And so that's the equation that I've given myself. So it's been a good body by and large with a couple of disadvantages.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course that exercise is beneficial for like your joints and lots of other things besides.
Everything.
And your heart and all that.
And your mental health as well, I think.
Oh, massively. Absolutely. So now, have you always been atheist?
Yes.
You have, right. So I went to a Catholic primary school, and so it took a while to come to it. No, you always have.
I was born into an atheist family. I can claim no credit for my atheism, just like most Catholics can't claim credit for the Catholicism. They were brought up a Catholic. I was brought up an atheist. So I find religion actually to some extent unfathomable. I once said at an atheist conference, for me it's like gridiron football. To non-Americans, when you watch gridiron football, you think we can see people get really excited about it, but you can't for the life of you understand why.
Yes,
and I feel very much that way about religion. I just don't get what they're talking about. And I've actually had people say to me, but what do you think happens to you after you die? And I go, well, I assume the same thing that happened to me before I was born. Nothing. I spent, I don't know, since the beginning of the universe not born, and that didn't seem so bad. I don't remember. Like, who cares? I came from oblivion, and into oblivion I will go.
Right.
And I'm not frightened of that at all.
I thought you said I came from a Bolivian for a second.
Oblivion. And I always find that weird that people would think that was so astonishing that that would be okay. I see religion, and I'm going to offend a lot of people here, but that's life. And as I sometimes say, if the worst thing that happens to you in your life is you get offended by something I say, you're living a pretty good life.
Yeah.
I see a lot of religion as being fairly narcissistic, this idea that human beings are special. We're created in the image of some sort of divine being. Really? You looked at most human beings? Can't be that divine. And that somehow we alone get to be, get to live on forever. And personally, I can't think of anything worse than heaven. Imagine who it'd be filled with. No.
Right, yeah. I know for me, I'm so science-based that, I don't believe anything. Numerology, scientology, just nothing.
Nor do I.
I just need evidence and proof, and that's quite lacking. That's what I found. Whereas I started Catholic. There is a lot of control of bodies and how you should feel about your body through religion. So it's good that you evaded all of that from your whole life.
Yes, I wasn't brought up to be ashamed of my body or to feel that bits of it were dirty or filthy or any of those kinds of things, which doesn't mean I didn't absorb some of that in the 50s and 60s and 70s, well, less so in the 70s, because it was still very much part of just the air you breathed, really, when you were a girl. But I didn't get the supernatural, God-ordained kind of backing for that, which a lot of my less fortunate friends born into religious families definitely have had to struggle with their whole life.
Yeah, particularly I feel for people that are homosexual, just that God's just watching you when you jerk off, just to that level of minutiae of your daily life must be...
What a weird old God, if that's what... this is the thing. People describe to me the God they worship, and I often say, are you sure that's someone you should be worshipping? It doesn't sound like it to me.
And that's the thing about it too, is like, do what you want, but it's just the impressing on other people. Obviously, that's all of that. But anyway, so now, did you know anything about menopause in your younger days?
Not as much as I thought I did. It was very interesting. I've suffered most with perimenopause rather than, and I think we call it the menopause, but actually the bit that's hard is perimenopause.
Yeah.
Menopause itself is actually fine because that's when all of it stops.
Yes, indeed.
Perimenopause was the bit that got me, and that was the unpredictable periods and the very, very heavy, unbelievably heavy periods, which we're only just starting to speak about honestly now, that so many women from the age of about 45 until 52 on average suffer, and you can go 6 weeks without a period, then you'll suddenly get one, and you will flood. Like I've been speaking on a stage knowing that the blood is running down my legs. I've been wearing black trousers. I wore them for a long time for that reason entirely.
Wow.
And just having to plough on. I'm often astonished by what women are able to do when they have to, and the added degree of difficulty that they don't even acknowledge is going on.
Yeah.
And then I'd have that flooding period for a few days. It'd go, great relief, and then it'd be back a week later, and then I wouldn't have, and it went on like that for quite some time, for years.
Years, right.
And I just put up with it. I eventually went to see someone who said, we could give you ablation in your uterus or something.
It's like,
which sounded fairly...
Is that burning it? Or
yes, burning the surface of the uterus. And I just thought, I think I'd rather put up with the periods, to be honest.
Did they talk about hormonal treatments or...
Yeah, but I didn't have any other real symptoms. Like I didn't get hot flushes much at all. I did occasionally get a sensation like ants crawling on my head.
Wow.
But which I've heard of from other women as well.
Yeah.
But apart from the very heavy periods, I really was quite lucky. And so I just kept, did I want to go on HRT? And I sort of didn't. And then finally, around about 52, classic, absolutely normal age, my periods completely stopped. And I wasn't sure they'd completely stopped for about 6 months because, you know, I used to have long pauses and think, oh, is it over? And then they come back. So they completely stopped. And from that, once I'd realised that it was done, that I was through the menopause, I have not looked back.
Oh, wow.
I actually did a TED talk basically about the unbearable lightness of ageing for women. And my theory is that ageing is easier for women than it is for men. Part of the reason is because we actually get benefits as we get older. We don't get periods anymore. There is simply no downside to that. Like, that is awesome. That is so liberating. Every 28 days for God knows how many decades, we had to go through this ridiculous experience, which was worse than taboo. You weren't even allowed to talk about it, for God's sake.
Yeah. Did you have painful periods?
Not particularly. My periods until perimenopause were fairly okay. I mean, they could be unpleasant and all that kind of stuff, but that you should be ashamed of them, and that if the worst thing that could happen to you is someone might see some period blood on your jeans, you know, whatever. I mean, it's awful that women have to go through that. And my generation of women, it was beyond shameful if it was revealed.
Did you feel that, or did you have, because of your feminism and all that sort of stuff, or no? Right.
I felt it like, you know, I've gone through the thing with a girlfriend saying, have a look. Am I showing? I've got a tampon and I know it's leaking. Can you see anything? Of course, you don't want to walk around with a red stain on the back of your dress. Nobody does. Mm-hmm. Even today, nobody does. Mm-hmm. So it's horrible. And getting over having that go, that headspace that it liberates, the energy that is available to you. And also, I've got big tits and, oh, my God, they never hurt anymore.
Oh, yeah.
They never hurt anymore.
No matter how much you slap them.
No, I can do also, like, you know, it doesn't matter. From an age of 11, when I started to get breasts, and I suddenly leaned forward into the desk at school and went, ow, why is that hurting? Basically, my boobs have hurt every 2 weeks, for 2 weeks, for the whole time that I was fertile. You know, my ovaries were functioning, and they would swell and get bigger, and they would be painful and all that kind of thing. And now they never hurt.
Wow.
So my view is, bring on menopause.
Right, okay. It's because mine are quite large as well, double G cups that started when I was about 11 as well. I don't get that much pain, but yeah, like sometimes, just before you start bleeding, yeah, it is quite sore to touch. So I haven't heard that one yet. This is why I love this podcast. I'm learning so much.
And also pregnancy. When you're pregnant, your boobs hurt the whole time. When you breastfeed, they hurt the whole time. I mean, women's reproductive system, when you're a life support system for other human beings, there's a lot of pain involved in that for you. The great thing about menopause is you are no longer a life support system for other human beings, and you can have sex without getting pregnant or worrying about contraception.
Yay! And did you want to have sex? Because that's something else that can happen, obviously.
Yes.
Good.
In fact, I think I wanted to have it more because I didn't have to go through all the messy business with contraception and worrying about all of that and all of that energy-sapping crap as well.
Right.
It's all very well for people to go on about, abortion is a sin and contraception should stop you. But contraception fails. I had an abortion in my 20s because contraception failed. I didn't want to go back and, the abortion was a minor experience to me, really, but nevertheless, it's not a pleasant thing. Nobody wants to have one. Mm. And then when I wanted to have children, it was really took ages, and I thought, what is this bloody reproductive system? When you don't want to get pregnant, you get pregnant and drop out. When you do want to get pregnant, you can't get pregnant. For goodness sake. And all of that is gone. I never even think about it.
Right.
And in fact, I would say that my relationship with my body as it has aged has become much healthier than when I was young because my expectations of how it looks have become much more realistic.
Right.
And my delight is that I don't have arthritis, that I am reasonably flexible, I don't have any osteoporosis, I'm reasonably... So my expectations are much lower about how my body's going to be, and my body basically outperforms most of those expectations, so I feel much better about it.
Hooray. And you don't take any estrogen at all?
Never have,
Right.
no.
So that's great that you've still got all those things, because some people obviously immediately start to suffer with their joints and their heart and their osteoporosis. So well done you. Well done, body.
But also, I mean, my husband has a lot of arthritis. Now, he rode motorbikes when he was young, and so he had a lot of motorbike accidents. So, of course, he has arthritis. And I've noticed that a lot of men also have enormous aches and pains as they get older. That's part of aging. But so their bodies just deteriorate, whereas we do get improvement once we stop having periods and sore tits and all that stuff. And they just have deterioration. And also, as they age, white, straight, privileged men, for the first time in their lives, become part of what I call a group. So in other words, they become an old codger, an old driver, because they've always been just themselves, the norm, the benchmark against which everyone else is measured. Suddenly, they're being measured against young white privileged men and found wanting. But that doesn't matter to women. We've been part of a group the whole of our lives. We're used to that. We know how to cope with it. This really shocks guys. They don't know how to deal with it. Never had it before.
So how old are you and your husband?
I'm 64, my husband's 67.
Right, okay. Yes, and so for me, because I do comedy shows, my Austen and Dickens musicals, for a long time I would get sad that people my own age weren't coming to my shows and frustrate me. And now I'm growing into my audience and also just embracing the older women who generally, they have more energy. They have a disposable income. They don't have children to look after. So they come to see my shows, and I think that's bloody marvelous. So so letting go the expectations and that sort of thing, it makes you feel much happier.
But also, I get very angry. So often have I had conversations with people, writers' festival organisers and things like that, who've said to me, an older woman, oh, yes, the festival's going really well. Now, if we could only change the audience. What do you mean? I say, what's wrong with the audience? Oh, they're all older women. I go, how dare you? How dare you despise your audience?
Yeah.
Older women they're the backbone of things like writers' festivals, the film industry, the book industry. Every country town writers' festival is organised by a committee of older women. At the moment in Australia, we've got this upsurge of independents standing for office. Yes, most of the independents who are being selected are women in their 40s or 50s, but the organising committees, the people who are going out in their T-shirts, older women, older women, older women. I am so sick of the way we go, older women. We don't really like them. They're not really very sexy. They're not that. Fuck off and die. They're the most engaged, smart, experienced, enthusiastic backbone of every community you could ask for. Get down on your knees and thank them for doing it despite your disrespect.
And for giving birth to you in the first fucking place.
Exactly, and bringing you up and putting their own lives on hold to bring you up. And then when they finally get to the point where you don't need them anymore, you turn around and say, too old now, we don't want you. Fucking strangle
Which
you.
you're not suffering from. And so now, did your mother teach you about menopause at all or talk about it?
Never spoke about it. I think she had a hysterectomy, but I can't quite remember. No, she was from Manchester and pretty forthright and a feminist for her era. She's still alive. She's still got her marbles and terrific. But no, they were very reticent about sex and all that kind of, very English about that kind of thing. Didn't get spoken about much. If you ask them a question, they'd always answer it honestly, but they weren't, they didn't volunteer the information. I did read Germaine Greer's The Change before I went through menopause, and then I remember complaining vociferously that why hadn't anyone told me that menopause was like this? And then it suddenly hit me. Jane, you read The Change. It's not that older women don't tell younger women about menopause. It's that younger women sit there and go, that'll never happen to me. They don't listen. Right. And I think it's because it's quite right that they don't listen. They don't think it's relevant to them yet. And we do tend to take in the information that we think is relevant to us. And so I'm now of the view that it's almost impossible to prepare people for menopause, that you can do it intellectually. I can read The Change, but I haven't got it in here because I don't see it as being just about to happen or really that it's going to happen to me like that. And maybe that's the way human beings get through life. We don't actually deal with things till we have to deal with them. And I think that, so I'm forgiving of younger women not listening. I'm not blaming them. I didn't listen either to older women who told me things. I think 'twas ever thus.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I'd love it to get more of a base level of understanding, particularly around women in the workplace. The statistics around women that resign because they don't know that they're in menopause. They just think they're going crazy, or they can't deal with it in the workplace because they feel they're not getting any empathy from people in the workplace. So it feels like, and men, because men therefore would never listen, but they should listen and they should know about it. So how do we get that
Well, I think we have to
level?
de-shame it, because I suppose in a way I was lucky that I wasn't brought up religiously, that I was brought up to be straight up and straightforward. So even though I was standing there on the stage with the blood running, I wasn't ashamed of it. Might have been embarrassed and felt uncomfortable, but I wasn't ashamed. I didn't think I was disgusting or I couldn't possibly ever tell anyone because I don't know what might happen. I didn't feel like that. And so if you can take the shame out of it, then women are less likely to do things like resign from work if it happens. And also we can speak more openly about it. And I think we are speaking more openly about it. I mean, I went through...
Absolutely. Just in the last couple of years.
Yeah, exactly. I went through menopause. Germaine Greer's book, The Change, was virtually the only thing available.
Wow.
We just didn't talk about it. So maybe that's true, but I still think we can listen and we can be sympathetic and empathetic to people who are going through menopause when we're it's in our future rather than our past. But we still can't actually it's like reading a book about childbirth. You can read the book, but until you actually go through childbirth, like, you're not really going to understand it in the way that you will after you've done it.
No, I think I'm having erratic periods, and some of them are heavier, like 2 tampons at night, things like that. But that's it. But yeah, so I'm just trying to be forewarned as forearmed. I've never had anxiety in my life. I've never had depression, so it'll be crazy if that happens. And I have no idea how I'll deal with it.
Neither of those happened to me. I had chronic anxiety. That's what my memoir's about.
Yeah.
Chronic anxiety in my 20s until my 30s, really early 30s. Chronic anxiety, categorizable anxiety neurosis. I sought help from psychiatrists, psychologists, all sorts of people.
How did you stop that?
Very gradually, but real danger happened to me. So I nearly lost my first daughter. She was born prematurely and picked up a horrible illness, and an illness, by the way, spiritual illness that you still cannot vaccinate and there's no cure for. So I do recommend to the anti-vaxxers that they go into if you like it, really want to get the experience of pediatric ICU and spend some time in there watching the very sick babies, and then tell me you're opposed to vaccination. Absolute nonsense. Because I spent 2.5 weeks with a baby in intensive care, and I saw when she stopped breathing in my arms 3 times, had to be resuscitated 3 times, rushed into ICU, got the last available neonatal intensive care bed available in New South Wales at night, and I really thought she was going to die. And I got help the next day from a grief counsellor in the hospital. She did not die. Indeed, she recovered, and she's now a mother herself. But he said 3 sentences to me, which have become the kind of mantra of my life, and they started to unlock the anxiety that I'd suffered from for so long, which I now understand, and I think a lot of anxiety emanates from this, was the desire to control the uncontrollable. And what I had to do was to give up the idea that I could control most things. I think the whole human race, the whole of human species is going through that kind of lesson with COVID. We're having to learn just how little control we actually have. And the 3 things that were said to me were, he walked up to me and he just said, there's nothing special about you, and there's nothing special about Polly, my daughter. Terrible things can happen, and they can happen to anyone. Safety is an illusion. Danger is reality. And sounds terrible, brutal thing to say to her. Yeah, but it was wonderful, because I'd been doing all this. How had I caused this? Was it the drink I had before I knew I was pregnant? Was it that they put me in room 13 when my waters were leaking? All this superstitious QAnon, lizard people run the world.
Yeah,
somebody
religious.
must be to blame, religious, all this stuff human beings do to tell themselves that they're in control, and if they just knew the magic spell, they could make their life controllable and wonderful and fantastic. I realised, no, there is no magic spell. I can't control very much, really. What I need to learn is, what can I control? How can I minimise danger, but I can't take it out. I can only minimise it sometimes and not always. And if I can't control something, forget about it. Nothing I can do. Forget about it. So, for example, people say to me, are you afraid of giving a speech? No. The reason is, I'll get up there I'll say what I've got to say as well as I know how, as engagingly as I know how. But I don't worry about how the audience is going to react, because I can't control that. The audience controls that. And when people get anxious, they're usually wanting to control something they can't control.
Yeah.
So you're anxious about giving a speech because you want the audience to think you're awesome.
Yeah.
Well, you don't know if they're going to think you're awesome. They probably won't. The best you'll get is a few laughs. And even if they think you're awesome, 5 to 10 minutes after you've left the stage, they won't remember much that you said. And a day later, they won't remember anything you've said. They might remember they enjoyed the speech. That's about as much as you'll get if you were awesome.
Right.
And even if you were terrible, they probably won't even remember hearing you give a speech. You know what I mean? So forget it. Just do what you do.
Yeah. And there's something I'm getting better at. Having been on stage I'm a full-time performer, have been for 22 years, and I'm getting better at that. You know, you only feel as good as your last show, or the one person in the front row that's got a face like a slapped ass. So you just go, what's wrong with you? Exactly. What's wrong with you? Everyone else is loving it. Oh, I'm shit. So yes, I'm getting better at that. So wait a minute. So this was the end of your anxiety, having a child go through that experience?
Well, yes, because it was real danger.
Yeah.
And I think I'd always lived a safe life, and I think on some level I knew that was bullshit. I didn't know how I'd cope if things were tough and difficult. On some level, and there was a lot of other stuff that I hadn't resolved, and, there was all the usual shit that people have. But when I started to unlock that, have the self-awareness that I was trying to control the uncontrollable, and that's what was frightening me, that I should just give up. Like, I stopped being afraid of flying because I realised I couldn't keep the plane in the air with my feet. Because what I was doing was I was doing that double thing that people do, where I would have a terrible thought about what might happen, because I was thinking to myself that if I thought about all the terrible things that could happen, then maybe I could stop them happening. But at the same time, as I was doing that, I was also thinking, yes, but what if by thinking the terrible thoughts, I could make them, I'm making them happen, I'm conjuring them up. So I was doing this double shit, right? And then I realised two things. I can't stop them happening by thinking a thought, and I can't make them happen by thinking a thought. I'm not that powerful. Yes. I don't. My thoughts are just fucking thoughts. They have no power at all. I was overemphasizing my own kind of supernatural power.
It's almost like you thought you were praying.
Exactly. It's nonsense. So when I gave that all up, I would get on a plane and I would think, well, it's the pilot's job to keep it in the air, and I shan't worry about it. And if it starts to plummet, I'll worry about it then.
Yeah, and I've never really had a fear of flying, but every now and then when there's some news story, you sort of sit there and just go, this could be interesting now. So have you talked to your daughters about menopause at all, or do you think they won't take it in because they're younger ladies?
It hasn't come up.
Right.
They're only 33 and 30, so mostly our conversations with my elder daughter, they're all about her two small children and how impossible they are and how she's a terrible mother and, all that.
Right.
So we're in that stage.
Yeah.
So I think menopause might be a little premature at the moment and not really what she's engaged with. And my 30-year-old is just trying to start to think about having a baby. So a lot of our conversations are about that kind of thing. And again, menopause doesn't seem appropriate, and it would be me saying, now, girls, sit down and let me tell you. And I just don't operate like that. So
right,
when
okay.
it starts to be appropriate, I'm happy to talk about it.
So, but you didn't talk about it while you were going through it with them, or?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
They were very well aware of the heavy periods. My husband always had maxi pads and super tampons in the glove box of the car. And,
nice husband.
We were well equipped, and I was always taking another pair of shorts with me because you didn't know.
Wow.
It was that bad.
Right, okay.
I could go through a maxi pad and a super tampon in 10 minutes.
In 10?
Yeah. At its worst, it was unbelievable.
Oh, my word. And how long? And like for days, or?
Yeah, it could be for days, but usually lasts a day or two at its very worst. But yeah, it could be for days. It was horrible.
The expense of that too.
Yeah, particularly as they then still had the luxury tax on tampons and pads, because it's a luxury, ladies, for you to be able to soak up your blood.
Jesus Christ! Especially through that whole thing, as you say, we are the vessels that bring life, but yet the shame around the actual process that brings life is very annoying. So, how long have you been married? You've been married quite some time, I believe.
Well, we married. We lived together for 9 years. Then we got married, and we've been together for 46 years.
Right.
So
you've been together 46 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So you lived together for 9 years. Was that scandalous at the time?
It was called Living in Sin.
Yes.
And I remember the woman next door very strongly disapproved, and I felt like a scarlet woman, I remember, whenever she had anything to do with me, which was in her mind as little as possible. But I quite liked it. I quite liked being a scarlet woman. No one had ever thought of me that way before. 46 years later, I suspect she was probably wrong.
Because my parents lived together for 6 months in 1971, so equally.
Yes, well, this would have been 75, 76. And amongst some people, it was still seen as scandalous, but most people not. My mother, who was very enlightened, actually said to my father, I don't want, because I was at uni and my husband was working at the time, and she said, I don't want Jane to be dependent, financially dependent. So they gave me an allowance, and I worked part-time, but I was at uni. So they sort of were totally cool with it.
Fantastic. And is your husband a feminist as well? I should hope so.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah. And was he always like that?
Yeah. The first time I met him was at a friend's birthday party, her 17th, and he was 20 or something, or 19, and he rode in with his then girlfriend on his flashy motorbike, and they were very glamorous, the pair of them, and I thought, oh, wow. And he had a sticker on his helmet, which was about Australian conservative politics, and in those, he was a posh bike. He went to a private school. I went to public school. So he had this conservative political sticker on his helmet. And I looked at him and I said, what kind of a bikie are you with that sticker on your helmet? And he turned around and went, what? And we had this big political argument. And he was very unusual because most of the boys I had political arguments with in the 70s acted as if I'd committed lèse-majesty. You know, they were the boy. They knew better. They were spouting nonsense, but apparently this went automatically with the penis. Came as a gift pack. But Ralph, he loved it. You could see that he absolutely thoroughly enjoyed having this, crossing swords and making points and all that kind of thing. And we had the best time. And he's always been like that. So he just loves testing out ideas and trying out positions. And he doesn't have an assumption that because he's a man, his ideas are superior or he's entitled to have the last word at all.
Right.
And so we've continued that banter and political discussion for 46 years.
Is he a Liberal supporter?
No.
Oh,
He's dyed-in-the-wool Labor.
Right.
But we don't agree on everything at all. But we do agree on basic principles, I think, of social justice, redistribution of power, that kind of thing, equality, those kinds of things.
Fantastic. Yes, my husband's quite the feminist too, and he's listened to all of these podcasts, and it's just so gratifying to have somebody that is on board and knows about that. So is there anything else around menopause that you thought you might want to discuss or you'd thought about?
Simply that I think it's great at last that we're able to speak about these things because that is very new, and I think that is important, and it means the information's there when women are at the point in their life where they have the energy and the interest to pay attention to it. I do think we shouldn't be shoving it at young women at the moment tied up with all the other demands that we tie women up with. I also think it's really great that women who are going through menopause or are postmenopausal are able to talk about it openly and not have to try to pretend that they... I really don't like this idea of women having to pretend to be younger than they are. And I'm not really into the whole choice feminism thing about I want to put Botox in my face because it's my choice, or I want to... I mean, you can do what you like. It is your face. It is your body. And if you want to have cosmetic surgery and you want to stick needles in it, fine. But I would ask people to think, why do you want to do that? And people say, because for my pleasure. Okay, but why does your pleasure rest on you looking young? What's behind that? And also just be warned, particularly with cosmetic surgery and even I think with constant use of Botox, you don't actually end up looking younger. You sort of tend to end up looking, some people are going to hate me saying this, rich because it costs a lot of money, and insecure.
Right, okay. Would you say there was some correlation with you not feeling comfortable when you're a bit overweight with what you wear and stuff? That's a parallel?
Well, maybe, except it was health, like pre-diabetic is a good reason
absolutely.
To lose weight, and health does have an impact on your weight. I'm afraid that Botox is a risk. Plastic surgery, surgery of any kind is a risk, but if you're doing it because your health depends on it, then that makes sense. But you're doing it because your tummy's a bit fat. I mean, go ahead and do it if you really, really want to. But I always remember, and there was a time when I used to hate my stomach and think maybe I should have because I've got a sway back, so I've always had a fat tummy. And I remember thinking, oh, yes, but imagine your daughter's having to say, my mother died of having a tummy tuck. Just the humiliation in that. And I want to get to a point where women are comfortable in their own skin. They are happy the way they are. I didn't achieve that. I didn't like putting on weight and not being able to work. I didn't like it. I get that. But I didn't have any kind of liposuction, or I didn't hate it to the extent. And I really want women to feel I'm fine just the way I am. I don't have to be thinner, taller, smarter, harder working, younger, smoother skinned, whatever it is that other people are telling you have to be. I really want women to resist that, not give in to that. And I suppose why I am uneasy with the move to change the way you look artificially, and makeup, you can wash it off at the end of the night. Hair dye grows out, as we all found out during COVID. Getting your nails done, you can take it off. All those things, self-decoration, absolutely fine. Risking your life, sticking needles in your face, and it's botulism that you're putting in. I mean, people, anti-vaxxers and wellness gurus who go on about vaccination, their body being a temple, and you look at their faces and they're Botox to the nth degree, you think, come on now.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Talk about hypocritical and not thinking this through. It's fine if that's what you want to do, but I wish we didn't reject ourselves. I wish we didn't want to be the idealised image that we think turns men on. I understand why we feel we have to do that, because men are still the dominant culture. They still will decide whether we get ahead or whether we often have a secure old age or a penurious old age. Yes, they still make those decisions. So I understand that. But I still wish we didn't.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, it is an interesting one where you try to seek that acceptance within yourself, because I've had Botox before, absolutely. And for me, it was about I got these big bags under my eyes and I hated them. So I got Botox to stop them forming. And then, and I wish that I was like that, but I hated them. And it started when I was 32 or something. And I was just like, what the fuck is this? So, but believe me, I just wish that I was like that, but I haven't quite fully done that.
I hate this, which is genetic.
Right.
And both my sisters have got the double chin, but I'm the only one who got the gels and the double chin.
Bingo.
Bingo, lucky me. And I've got a great big thyroid gland. When I go on television, it works perfectly well, but it's enlarged, very common in postmenopausal women. There you are. There's another thing to let people know.
Okay.
And it can be quite unsightly. And when I go on television, I'll get a lot of well-meaning things saying, did you realise you have a goiter? Did you realise? And I have to go back and go, yes, thank you very much for because it can be dangerous. It could be thyroid cancer. I know it's not, but thank you. But that just brings me back to the fact that I've got a horrendously ugly neck.
Which I have not noticed ever, by the way.
But I have made a conscious decision that I want to see how this face is meant to turn out. And my line is, it won't be pretty, but it will be real.
Right.
It'll be real.
Yeah.
And so we've all got a part of our face that we obsess over. But it's like a friend of mine did the same thing, had her bags done. And I didn't notice before. And I didn't notice after. She looked just the same to me. She was really pleased, but I'm thinking, I can't see any difference. She spent thousands of dollars and got through a whole lot of pain, and she looks just the same as she always did.
Well, that's good that she didn't look like Kenny Rogers afterwards, or
well, that's true.
He looked so bad, or Mickey Rourke. They were early.
Paul Hogan.
Yeah. Oh, does he? I haven't seen Crocodile Dundee. Oh, right. Okay. So that's not a knife. This is a knife. Ooh, ding, ding. Now, I have been asking people too. I don't know if you had a chance to look at the a fun menopause fact. Did you see that one question at all?
Yes, and I couldn't think of the only fun menopause fact I could think of, someone had already said it, was that the human female is the only creature on the planet, apart from a couple of species of whale, I believe.
Indeed, yes.
That live beyond their reproductive capacity. So we are really unique in terms of being given some life where we're not life support systems for other human beings. And there's a whole lot of theories about the grandmother effect and the reason for that in an evolutionary sense. And they're saying now, which I find really interesting, that it may have been the reason civilization developed.
Ah.
Because when older women had time to help their daughters bring up the next generation, more of those children survive. So they've actually got evidence that shows that maternal grandmothers' involvement in grandchildren increases longevity and likelihood of those children to survive to adulthood, particularly in hunter-gatherer societies and things like that.
Right. Survival of the fittest, Darwinism in action.
Yeah, that thing about older women being of no value and of no use and past their use by date. Are you kidding, guys?
Yeah.
We're the reason there is a human race
Yeah.
and civilization. Thanks for taking it over and making such a hash of it.
Mic drop. Mic drop. Well, I think that's a wonderful place to end everything. So, and you are a grandmother and enjoying that. Actually, I'll just ask that.
Grandmotherhood is the great reward. That's another fun menopause fact. There's something about your grandchildren which is different from your children. And I think it is that you love them just the way you loved your children, but you're not responsible for them. You're not responsible for how they turn out. You don't have to think about their emotional or intellectual development. You just can love them and play with them and have fun with them and enjoy them. And that is just, they're exhausting. I mean, every time I have my grandchildren and mind them and things, I end up collapsed on the couch thinking, holy shit, how did I ever do that day in, day out, day in, day out? It's such a wonderful, rewarding thing, grandparenthood. My husband enjoys that just as much as I do. So that's the sort of hidden reward. And people, hate the idea of being a grandmother or getting called granny or any of that kind of stuff. Oh, it makes me feel so old. It's one of the rewards of being old. And aren't we lucky to get old?
Yeah.
Lots of people do. Amy Poehler had a great quote. She said, stop complaining about getting old. There's a whole lot of dead people who really wish they were still alive.
Yeah, that's what I always say. My friends complain about their birthdays. I'm like, well, what's the alternative? What would you prefer? Yeah, exactly. Well, on that note, thank you very much. It's like my birthday having you on my podcast.
Oh, it's lovely to be here.
I hope that you deal with your Liberal government and maybe you'll run against Scott Morrison this time instead of Tony Abbott. We didn't even get to the Minister of Everything, but I think that's good. So have a wonderful night and thanks very much for talking to me. And yes, I might see you in the flesh sometime, somewhere, someplace.
That would be lovely.
Okay.
And thank you, Penny, for having me.
No worries.
And if anyone listening has had plastic surgery, I apologise for everything I've just said, but I'm honest.
No, absolutely. You're all about your opinions and that's fucking great. So hooray. Don't apologise. Don't apologise, as you said yourself. Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
Bye-bye.
Just break my own rules. We'll do that all the time too.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
See you. Bye.
And that was the unapologetic, fierce feminist and Walkley Award winning Jane Caro. As I get older, I too can really see the focus shifting so much to always attracting youth audiences. So I agree that we should worship at the feet of the older women who have nurtured the world and provide content for them rather than pretending they don't bloody exist. Jane's new adult novel, not porn, about domestic violence and motherhood, The Mother, is out in 2022. She has an array of other books and articles you could seek out, and I reckon you should. So that was the penultimate or penny-ultimate episode of Season 1 of Showy Ovaries. Christmas is on Saturday, and oh my god, Showy Ovarians, I am coming to you from a motel in Hanmer Springs. Yes, I escaped Auckland, clutching a vaccine pass and a negative test, before heading to Christchurch in New Zealand to stay with my septuagenarian parents. I have taken 5 days to get here on a road trip just to make doubly sure I am not COVID-ridden. Omicron looks to be the Grinch that infected Christmas the world over, so please stay safe and merry all the things and happy holidays and get vaccinated. My last show is with Louisa Wall next Wednesday, so finally, please do spread me all about on your socials, and excitingly, you can now rate me 5 stars on Spotify. I mean, you could rate any stars, but I think 5 has a nice ring to it, like 5 gold rings. Merry Christmas, and I'll see you next week for the last episode of Showy Ovaries. And stay juicy, just like a turkey. Ka kite.